I'm Cindy Brown, and let's queer up the world view. Sydney Mardi Gras faces backlash over refusal to center trans rights in 2026. Organizers of the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras are facing sharp criticism after refusing to support a motion to make trans rights the focus of the 2026 event. At its annual general meeting last November, the Mardi Gras Board rejected member resolutions, including one titled "Embrace Trans Rights, Not Trump," which called specifically for parade floats to actively support trans and non-binary communities and condemn U.S. President Donald Trump. In a statement released Tuesday, the board said adopting the resolutions would restrict creative direction and conflict with standard processes, adding, the decision was made to align with Mardi Gras' values, strategic priorities, and long-term sustainability. A spokesperson said, quote, "Mardi Gras stands proudly with transgender and gender-diverse communities. We are and always will be a visible, active ally," end quote. While arguing the board must respect the independence and diversity of parade participants, activists strongly disagreed. Evan Gray of Pride in Protest accused the board of attacking trans people by framing them as intimidating and their rights as an imposition. Former board member Charlie Murphy called it a, quote, "deliberate choice to abandon the trans community politically," end quote. Critics say the decision signals a troubling retreat from political advocacy at a pivotal moment for trans rights globally. Now, I was the first director of Miami Beach Pride, so I have a little bit of insight as to being the director of a Pride event and the activities of the participants in the parade. I support Sydney Mardi Gras' decision specifically because I don't feel it's appropriate for them to tell everybody that's in the parade that they must center trans and condemn Trump. I imagine many of them will probably do that anyway, but I understand where the board is coming from. I will take them at their word that they will have trans and gender nonconforming communities very visible at Pride. They're very supportive. But it's a tough call, and there has to be some kind of consensus there.
That is the way of looking at it. As someone who, the first piece I ever wrote in The Advocate was criticizing Capital Pride, and the International Pride group actually criticized me for, which I was very proud of upsetting them. Mm-hmm. But whether or not this should be the exact theme, I think the problem with this Pride committee and many others is there's a lack of legitimacy in their decision making. It's the board, not the community, that makes the decision. So maybe this should be the thing, maybe it should be something else, but when it's a small group of people that do it and not the entire community having a say on it, it's hard to do. At options, sometimes we get criticized for our options awards of who wins, but everybody in the community that wants to vote can vote in it. So if you have a problem with the community, not with us, and that creates a little bit of legitimacy in that sort of thing, but also, for better or worse, trust the LGBTQ community. Don't just decide as a board what to do for things like this, because otherwise you're going to get way more participation and engagement anyway by letting it. But that's not just the Pride. The whole LGBTQ advocacy space has been facing this for a while, and they're random people with some money get to do something. That's great, but what do the community actually want? And knowing my luck, they'll just vote to make the Barbie and Ken Pride theme or something. Who knows?
And I have to say, boards have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. And while we could sit back and disagree or don't agree with their minutes that they post or anything like that, they ultimately have a responsibility. And when you add in that second half about, disrespecting a leader of another country, mm-hmm. I mean, there could be political blowback on that they may not be willing to realize could happen. And I just feel like that could be another reason of saying, oh, hold the horses here. We can't, because if you open that up for hate, you open that up for, okay, let's have giant, pillars of fire and him on it or something like that. And that's
Don't
not
give
what
me
they
good
want.
ideas, Vaughn.
No, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the kind of that's where they would take it if they were given that permission. And by saying that, you're giving them that permission to
I
do
mean,
that.
and plus, I mean, I know that Alex will give me daggers for this one. Is that the board has to consider sponsors and funding. I mean, burning effigies of Trump is not going.
Which technically
it's
no
not
one
going to attract a lot of
nothing
funding.
in the story said anyone's going to do that.
No, and
Do be careful.
but to enforce every flow must condemn Trump rule is very narrow. Like, it's got the scope just narrowed too badly. On the other hand, I was going to say, with Australia, what is with their nonprofit events recently? They have a major book event that got cancelled because the board decided to uninvite a Palestinian Australian author who wrote a novel, and the board is like, oh no, that's going to be too controversial after the Bondi Beach shooting. And then suddenly all of them dropped out. The board had to grovel, apologize, and now the entire festival has been shut down. So, well, are we, while these are, so what's with Australia and lately with the
I don't think
festivals?
it's just an issue with Australia. I think that there is, I've sat on many boards, and I've sat on boards that got into trouble. And, I think that there is a legal and fiduciary responsibility if you sit on a board. If you do something that could damage the board, that is a violation of your board service. And I think the bottom line is there is a lot more to this than we actually know. Are all parade participants literally required to have this in their contingent? That's the part that I am off-put by.
Well, here's the question. So I definitely prefer the membership and the community to sign, but they could always have just said, make it more trans focused and not talk about Trump. Even though I would say, I understand why people are probably going to go in that direction, because it's getting really hard not to understand that Trump is not normal and that you are dealing with an Adolf Hitler level event in this country. Like there's an article I was just reading in Minnesota, where it's just getting beyond insanity. There was a medical facility got surrounded by ICE, so they had to hide a woman in labor and her family in an attic. I don't think, if we're going to talk this much about Trump, you have to understand that we're not talking about a normal president. We're not talking about a normal he's threatening Canada, Greenland, and I can't even name half the countries he's upset with this week. I don't know who's upset with next week.
No, today he's at Davos. He'll be upset with all of Europe.
It's not normal, but to sidebar that for a second, the board could have always tried to find another trans-focused way of doing this.
Take Trump completely out of the equation. And, that's why I say, it's a shame they couldn't come to a more consensus, but I think just like this country, it's either this or it's that, and there's no in between. And I think that we have to be willing to look at some in between at this point. And so that is a big LGBT story.
Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry.
There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBT stories by sharing and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.